The first hand closed around June Harrow's wrist before she fully realized she was in trouble. It happened fast. Too fast for thinking. One moment she was stepping down from the stagecoach, boots hitting the red dirt of Palo Duro with a dull thud, dust rising around her skirts. The next, the street seemed to tighten. Men moved closer, shadows shifted. The air thickened with heat, sweat, and something darker.
"Well now," a voice drawled. "Looks like the stage brought us a gift."
June tried to pull free. The grip tightened instead, her heart slammed against her ribs. She tasted iron, though she hadn't bitten her tongue. The sun hung low and brutal, bleaching the street, the buildings, the faces watching her like this was entertainment instead of danger. She forced herself to breathe. Don't panic. Panic makes it worse. She'd learned that lesson 3 days ago in a boarding house room in Amarillo, when a man she'd trusted had shown his true face and left bruises where promises used to be.
"Let go,"
she said now, her voice steady in a way she didn't feel.
"You're hurting me."
The man laughed, not loud, not cruel enough to draw attention, just enough to let her know he didn't care.
"Hurt's a strong word, sweetheart."
He leaned closer. She smelled whiskey and tobacco.
"You ain't hurt yet."
Someone else whistled. Another voice chimed in from behind her.
"Pretty thing to be traveling alone."
June's fingers curled around the strap of her carpetbag. Everything she owned in the world sat inside it. A spare dress, a comb, her mother's Bible, the letter that had brought her west and ruined her all at once. She lifted her chin and met the man's eyes.
"I'm looking for work."
That earned her another laugh, this one louder.
"Work,"
he repeated like it amused him.
"That's so. I can cook," she said. "Clean, Sue. I'm not afraid of long days." "You ain't afraid of much, are you?"
His thumb pressed into the inside of her wrist, right where the skin was thin.
"But you should be."
The men around them shifted closer. June counted them without turning her head. 4, maybe 5, too many. The stagecoach driver climbed back onto his seat without looking at her. The crack of the reins sounded final, like a door slamming shut. "This is how it happens," a quiet voice inside her said. "This is how you disappear." She dropped the carpetbag. The sound was small, barely anything at all, but it broke the moment open. She shoved the man hard with both hands. He staggered back half a step, more surprised than hurt. June didn't wait to see what he'd do next. She turned to run. A hand caught her sleeve, fabric tore. Someone cursed.
"Easy,"
the man said, his voice colder now.
"You don't want to make this worse."
She twisted, fighting fear burning hot and bright in her chest.
"That's enough."
The voice cut through the street like a blade, not loud, not shouted, just firm, final. Every hand on her loosened. June froze. The men turned as one. He stood a short distance away near the hitching post, tall, dark hat pulled low, sleeves rolled up, forearms corded with muscle and dust. He didn't rush, didn't posture. He simply stood there, feet planted like the ground itself had decided to claim him. The man holding her wrist sneered.
"This don't concern you, Ramirez."
The stranger's eyes never left June.
"Let her go."
The grip fell away. June stumbled back, breath coming hard now that she was free. She hugged her torn sleeve to her chest, suddenly aware of how exposed she was. How small. The man stepped closer. She noticed then how quiet he was. No wasted movement, no wasted words.
"She needs work,"
the first man said quickly, trying for humor again.
"We were just talking." "You were circling," the stranger replied, "like dogs."
The air shifted. June felt it, so did the others. One of the men spat into the dirt.
"You always gotta play the hero, Cole."
The stranger finally looked at him. His gaze was flat, unimpressed, dangerous in a way that didn't need showing off.
She said no. He said, "That should have been the end of it."
The man hesitated, glanced around. No one moved to back him up.
"This town ain't yours,"
he muttered.
"No." The stranger agreed. "But she is not yours either."
He turned then, finally, fully facing June.
"You hurt?"
he asked. She shook her head. It wasn't true, but it was close enough.
"You got somewhere to go."
Her throat tightened. She shook her head again. He studied her for a long moment. Not like the others had. Not measuring, not hungry. Just seeing. Then he bent, picked up her carpet bag, and slung it over his shoulder like it weighed nothing at all.
"She's with me,"
he said. The words landed heavy, absolute, no one argued. He nodded toward a bay gelding tied nearby.
"Can you ride?" "Yes,"
June said, surprised to find the answer ready. She hadn't been on a horse in years, but she knew enough not to show doubt now.
"Good."
He lifted her up without ceremony. His hands were steady, warm. The horse shifted, then settled. He mounted behind her, reins gathered with practiced ease. June felt the solid line of his chest at her back, the quiet strength there. The horse moved forward. No one followed. They rode out of Palo Duro in silence. The town fell away behind them, swallowed by dust and distance. June didn't look back. She couldn't. She focused instead on the rhythm of the horse, the open land stretching wide and empty ahead of them, the wind tugging at her hair like it wanted to pull her clean of the past. After a while, when the danger no longer pressed so close she could taste it, her body began to shake. She pressed her hands together in her lap, willing herself still.
"You're safe,"
the man behind her said quietly, as if he'd felt it.
"No one's following." "Thank you." He nodded once. "No need,"
she whispered. The ranch came into view as the sun dipped lower, a cluster of weathered buildings tucked against the vastness of the land. It looked lonely, honest, hard-won. An older man stood near the fence when they rode in. White hair, sharp eyes. He took one look at June and frowned.
"Who's this?"
he asked.
"Her name's June,"
the stranger said as he dismounted and helped her down.
"She's staying."
The older man's gaze flicked to June's torn sleeve, the faint marks on her wrist. His mouth tightened.
"Ike,"
he said to her, tipping his hat.
"You hungry?"
The question hit harder than anything else had.
"Yes," June said, "but I can work for it?" Ike snorted softly. "We'll see about that."
The stranger led her toward the house.
"You can rest first," he said. "We'll talk after."
She hesitated on the porch, suddenly unsure.
"Why did you help me?"
He paused. Looked out over the land like the answer might be written there.
"Because I've seen what happens when no one does."
He opened the door and stepped aside, letting her enter first. June crossed the threshold with her heart still racing, her future uncertain, her past pressing close behind her. She didn't know his name yet, but she knew one thing. Wherever he was going next, she was safer there than anywhere she'd been before. The house was smaller than June expected. One long room with a fireplace, a kitchen tucked in the back, and two doors that probably led to bedrooms. The floors were clean, the windows dusted, sparse furniture, no unnecessary frills, but it didn't feel cold. It felt lived in, quiet, like someone had chosen silence here, not just fallen into it. Cole Ramirez set her carpetbag down beside a narrow bed in the room across from his.
"This one's yours."
The walls were bare, the quilt hand-stitched. A small dresser with a cracked mirror sat beneath the window. Outside, the wind moved through dry grass and cottonwoods like it had somewhere to be.
"I'll be outside," he said. "Yell if you need anything."
And just like that, she was alone. June sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. Her hands were still shaking. She gripped the edge of the mattress to still them. The man had barely spoken since they left town, and yet he'd changed everything. The quiet in the house pressed in on her ears. Back in Philadelphia, quiet meant safety. Here it felt like waiting. She unpacked slowly. Shirtwaists, a worn skirt, the Bible wrapped in her mother's apron. She set it on the dresser, fingers lingering on the cover. Her father's wedding ring still hung from a ribbon inside the pages, hidden like something too sacred to wear. From outside came the steady thump of an axe splitting wood, rhythmic, unhurried. June moved to the window and pulled back the curtain. Cole stood by the chopping block, sleeves rolled high, dust clinging to his dark shirt. He worked like the axe was an extension of his body, focused, silent, each swing landing precise and even. Not a wasted motion, not a sound but the sharp crack of wood giving way. She didn't know what kind of man he was yet, but he didn't move like someone used to being soft. Behind him, near the barn, Ike leaned against a fence rail, watching with that narrowed, careful gaze of a man who had learned not to trust the world too easily. June let the curtain fall. She took off her shoes and lay back on the bed, just for a moment. The mattress was firm, the quilt warm. Her body ached in places she hadn't noticed before. The adrenaline was wearing off, and with it came the kind of exhaustion that made bones feel heavy. She closed her eyes. She didn't mean to sleep. When she woke, the light outside had shifted to late evening gold. Something smelled warm, beans maybe. Smoke. She sat up fast, heart thudding, until she realized the smell wasn't fire. It was dinner. June splashed water on her face at the pump in the kitchen and tried to tame her hair into a braid. She stepped out onto the porch and found Ike sitting in a chair, a tin plate balanced on one knee, spoon in hand. He didn't look up.
"Evening. Evening," she said softly. "Cole's down at the creek. He'll be back up soon." June hesitated. Is he always this quiet? Ike snorted.
She sat on the step beside the porch rail. The wind was dry, the land stretching out before them like it never planned to end. In the distance, she could hear frogs chirping near the water, the rustle of wind through dry leaves.
"I appreciate what you've both done,"
she said after a moment.
"Taking me in, feeding me."
Ike finally looked at her. His eyes were shrewd but not unkind.
"You're not the first runaway Cole's brought back. But you might be the first one who stays." June blinked. "He's helped other women." "Not exactly," Ike said. "Once brought back a half-dead coyote he found caught in barbed wire. Kept it alive for 3 weeks. Didn't say a word about it. Just tended it like it mattered." Ike leaned forward. "You got questions? Best get to asking."
June wasn't sure what to say to that.
"Why does he live way out here alone?"
Ike gave a low chuckle.
"That's a long story, and not mine to tell."
June nodded, even though frustration pulled at her ribs.
"He doesn't say much. Never has."
She waited. Ike didn't offer more. A few minutes later, Cole came walking up from the creek, shirt damp, boots muddy. His eyes landed on June, then flicked to Ike.
"Food's still warm,"
he said quiet. June stood brushing her skirts.
"I'll fix a plate." "I already did," Ike said. "It's inside." Cole said, "You ride well?"
She followed Cole through the door. He moved with the same quiet confidence he'd had earlier, never unsure, never rushed, the kind of calm that made her feel like if she stood too close, she'd either break it or be swallowed by it. They sat at the table, her, Cole, and Ike, and ate in near silence. The food was simple but good. Beans with salt pork, a square of cornbread, water drawn cool from the creek. June looked up surprised.
"Thank you. It's been a while."
He nodded once, that was it. Ike said nothing at all. Afterward, June offered to do the dishes. Cole started to refuse, but she cut him off.
"I need something to do," she said. "Let me start here."
He stepped back, letting her pass. While she washed, she heard their low voices outside on the porch, not arguing, just talking the way men do when they don't want a woman to hear. She could have strained to catch the words. She didn't. When she stepped out, Ike had gone. Cole leaned against a post, arms crossed, watching the last of the sun slide behind the hills.
"You have people looking for you?"
he asked, not turning his head.
"No," June said quietly. "No one?" A pause. "Then you have a last name?"
He nodded again.
"Harrow. June Harrow,"
he repeated, like he was testing how it fit in his mouth. She wrapped her arms around herself.
"And yours, first name, I mean?" "Cole." She smiled faintly. "Cole Ramirez."
He looked at her, then really looked. His eyes were cool, unreadable.
"I've got a spare room. You're welcome to stay as long as you need. I won't be a burden," she said quickly. "You're not. I can work. I meant what I said earlier." "I know."
June hesitated, then asked the question that had been gnawing at her since the ride out here.
"Why did you help me?"
Cole's jaw tightened.
"I saw what they were trying to do," he said simply. "Wasn't right. Most men wouldn't have cared. I'm not most men."
He said it like fact, not pride, and she believed him. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It settled soft like dusk. She stood next to him and looked out at the land, wide and golden and unkind, and yet something in her chest loosened. Maybe not safe, but safer. He said nothing else. She said good night, then stepped back inside, her hand lingering on the doorframe as she watched him. He stayed on the porch after she left, unmoving, eyes on the horizon. And that was when June realized he didn't speak much, but when he looked at me, I knew he'd buried something deep. The next morning, June woke to the smell of coffee and something baking. It was barely light outside, the sky still the color of pearl. The wind murmured through the cracked window, dry and constant. She sat up slowly, wrapped herself in her shawl, and peeked out the door. The cabin was quiet. A single lamp burned low in the kitchen. On the table sat a folded cloth, a tin cup steaming beside it. She stepped closer. The cloth covered 2 warm biscuits, flaky golden, the tops brushed with melted butter. A note rested beside them, written in tight, blocky letters.
Thought you might be hungry. See.
June stared at it for a long moment. No signature. Just that single letter. She sat down and ate slowly, grateful for the food and the care it implied. Not much, not loud, but it said more than words would have. The coffee was strong, nearly bitter, but it grounded her, woke her bones. And for the first time in what felt like weeks, she didn't feel like an intruder. Outside, the ranch had already begun to stir. The sun pushed over the far hills, casting long shadows across the fields. Chickens scratched near the coop. A dog she hadn't seen the day before loped past the porch, ears up, tail wagging like a slow metronome. Cole was by the corral, running his hand down the back of a tan gelding, the same quiet efficiency in every movement. Like everything in his life was measured. June walked toward the barn, hands tucked into her skirt pockets. She didn't know what to say, so she didn't speak. Just watched. The horse flicked its ears when she approached. Cole nodded toward it.
Name's Sawyer, he said, stubborn but smart. She smiled. I like him already. You hungry? I ate, she said. Thank you for the biscuits.
He didn't respond, but there was the smallest twitch at the corner of his mouth. She looked at the barn, the pasture beyond, the simple outbuildings weathered by sun and time.
You've built a good place here. Trying to keep it that way,
he said. Ike appeared around the corner of the chicken coop, carrying a bucket in each hand. He paused when he saw them talking.
Morning,
he said, voice dry.
Girls up early. I want to help. June said quickly, I know I can. Ike grunted. We'll see about that.
She followed him to the shed where tools were stacked neatly on hooks. He handed her a rake.
Coop needs cleaning. Hope you ain't too proud. Not even a little,
June said. Ike gave her a look that could have meant anything. Approval, or maybe just mild surprise. Then he turned and left her to it. The morning passed in work. Hard, dirty work. June rolled up her sleeves and raked out straw and droppings, her hands blistering against the wooden handle. The sun climbed steadily, sweat dripping down her back, dirt streaking her cheek. She didn't care. Each movement kept her anchored. Each scrape of the rake made her feel solid. Real. Not a runaway, not a discarded bride. Not someone with bruises tucked under her sleeves and shame buried behind her teeth. Just a woman doing honest work. At noon, Ike brought her a cup of water and leaned against the fence rail. You clean up better than I figured, he said. June wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. I can sew too. Cook. Patch roofs if you've got a ladder. Ike raised an eyebrow. Roof's fine. She drank the water, then looked at him over the rim of the cup. You think I'm not gonna last? I think folks come here running from something. Most don't stay. June set the cup down. I'm not most folks. He didn't argue. They stood in silence, the wind tossing dust along the fence line. You want to earn your keep, Ike said. Start with supper. You cook, we eat it. If it's trash, you wash the pans and we forget it happened. June nodded. Fair enough. She cooked that afternoon with what she found in the pantry, pinto beans, a slab of salt pork, onions from the garden, cornmeal for biscuits. Simple food, but filling. By the time the men came in from the pasture, the house smelled like home. They ate quietly. Cole didn't say a word, but when he reached for a second helping, June caught Ike watching her with something like grudging respect. After the meal, June started clearing the table, but Cole stopped her.
I'll do it. She blinked. You cook? No, but I clean.
There it was again, that simple logic of his. No pretense, no gallantry. Just balanced and stepped outside, letting the breeze cool her face. A few minutes later, Ike joined her on the porch, toothpick in his mouth.
You work hard,
he said.
I have to, she answered. I'm tired of being something folks try to rescue.
He squinted out at the land.
You think Cole rescued you? I don't know, June said honestly. But I'm still here, so maybe that counts for something.
Ike didn't speak for a long while. Then he said,
That man's got a lot buried under that quiet. You stay long enough, it'll show. I don't mind quiet,
she replied.
No, Ike said, but quiet's not the same as peace.
That night after they all turned in, June sat on her bed, staring out the small window. The moon hung low and orange above the hills. Coyotes cried in the far distance. The ranch creaked with wind and memory. She thought about Cole's eyes, cool, unreadable, and how they hadn't once looked away from her when he stood between her and danger. Thought about Ike's warning, about the weight men like Cole carried without saying a word. She wasn't a fool. This place wasn't safety, not yet, but it wasn't a trap either. It was something in between, a narrow place between who she'd been and who she might still become. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start with. I came here broken, but now I wanted to matter to him. June carried a basket of washed linens into the sun, the wood-framed door swinging shut behind her with a dry click. The Texas wind caught her skirt as she walked toward the clothesline. Above, the sky was blinding, an endless stretch of blue so wide it felt like it could swallow the world. Her hands moved on instinct, pinning the damp sheets up one by one. The simple rhythm calmed her, anchored her. The sharp scent of soap and dust, the wind tugging at fabric, it reminded her of days long before everything fell apart. Days with her mother's humming in the kitchen, and Sunday dresses that dried stiff and sun-bleached by afternoon. She was halfway through the basket when she saw him. Dutch Colburn. The man rode in like he owned the land, his horse kicking up dust as he approached the gate. June's hands froze. For a second, all she could hear was the blood rushing through her ears. He wore that same low smirk, the kind that said, I know something you don't. His shirt was clean, but his eyes were dirty.
Afternoon,
he called, pulling up just short of the fence.
Heard you were out here.
June dropped the clothespin. He leaned forward in his saddle like a man surveying property.
Didn't take long to find you. Figured a gal like you would end up hiding behind a man like Cole.
The door behind her creaked open. Cole stepped out onto the porch, his face unreadable, his eyes locked on Dutch like he'd been expecting this exact thing to happen. Dutch tipped his hat, slow and sarcastic.
Well, hell, speak of the devil.
Cole didn't move from the top step.
You lost. Not at all. Dutch grinned. Just checking on a friend. She ain't your friend,
Cole said, voice flat.
And she ain't your business.
Dutch turned slightly in his saddle to glance at June again.
She still got that temper. Shame what happened in Amarillo. Poor girl had such high hopes.
June felt heat rise in her throat, humiliation, anger, fear all tangled up in the worst way. Her fingernails bit into her palm.
Go,
Cole said. Just one word. Dutch looked back at him, face tightening.
You always take in strays, Ramirez. Or just the ones who look good in daylight.
June took a step forward before she realized she was doing it.
Get off this land.
Dutch's eyes sparked with amusement.
There she is.
Cole stepped down off the porch now, slow and steady.
You've got till I reach the gate, Dutch. Then things get different.
Dutch pulled on the reins, but he didn't leave yet.
This place ain't yours forever, Cole. Men like me, we don't forget. You know that better than anyone.
Then he turned his horse and rode out, the cloud of dust trailing behind him like a promise. Inside, the silence buzzed like hornets. Cole stood near the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. June set the laundry basket down harder than she meant to.
He knew where I was, she said. How did he know? Small town. Cole replied, word gets around.
Ike came in through the back, hat low over his eyes, but his voice carried weight.
Dutch ain't here to visit. He's testing the fence.
June looked between them.
You mean literally? No, Cole said. He's seeing what he can get away with.
June's hands shook again. She wrapped them in her skirt to still them.
I can't let him pull me back into that. I can't go through that again. You're not going anywhere,
Cole said. It wasn't tender, it wasn't comforting. But it was firm, and it was certain June met his eyes.
You don't get to protect me unless I say so.
For a beat, he didn't move. Then a flicker, barely there, but she saw it respect.
Then say so.
He replied. At night, June couldn't sleep. She sat at the edge of her bed, fingers worrying the hem of her sleeve, the wind tapping at the window like a ghost too polite to knock. Outside, the ranch slept, but she couldn't quiet her mind. Everything she'd tried to rebuild since she arrived, peace, strength, purpose, suddenly felt fragile. One visit from Dutch had shaken the foundation. She thought of running again, packing her things before sunrise, slipping away. But she'd done that once, and it hadn't saved her. From across the cabin she heard movement, a soft creak. She padded barefoot to the kitchen where a lantern flickered low. Cole sat at the table, a cup of coffee in front of him, untouched. She hovered near the doorway.
Can't sleep.
He didn't look at her.
Too much noise. June nodded. Same.
They stood in silence for a moment, both of them warned by things they wouldn't say out loud.
He's going to come back, she whispered, isn't he?
Cole's voice was quiet.
Yes.
She leaned against the doorframe.
Why didn't you just run him off with a shotgun?
He looked at her then, tired and sharp all at once.
Because men like Dutch don't fear bullets. They fear exposure. Weakness. They poke until something bleeds. June swallowed. He's right. I did run. I did believe in someone I shouldn't have. That doesn't make you weak, Cole said. It makes you human.
She stepped toward the table and sat down across from him.
He said something else. About you. That you weren't always Cole?
He said nothing.
Is it true? His jaw shifted. You don't want to know the answer to that, she asked. I do.
For the first time, he looked like he might actually tell her something. But instead, he stood.
Not tonight, he said, but soon.
She watched him walk to the door, open it, and step onto the porch where the darkness swallowed him whole. She stared at his empty coffee cup. She didn't want him to protect her. She wanted him to trust her. That would take more than silence. The next day, Cole left at first light to mend a broken fence down by the creek. June stayed behind, busying herself in the kitchen, then tending the garden. The sun was hot, the breeze sharp, and by afternoon, she needed water and shade. As she reached for the pump, Ike's voice startled her.
He's not just protecting you.
She turned. Ike stood with his sleeves rolled, arms crossed, squinting into the sun.
He's protecting this place, he said. This quiet. He's worked too damn hard to let it get ruined again. June nodded slowly. He said something like that last night. He ever tell you about Wyoming? No. Then don't push. When he's ready, he'll talk.
She looked at Ike carefully.
How long have you known him? Long enough to know he don't take people in lightly.
She pressed her lips together, then asked,
Why me?
Ike stared at her for a long moment.
Maybe he saw something worth saving.
That night June stood by her window and watched the moon rise over the barn. The land was quiet again. No hooves, no threats, but she knew it wouldn't stay that way. Dutch was coming back, she just didn't know when. And this time she'd be ready.
If Dutch came back, I needed to be ready. And Cole, he needed to stop hiding.
The rifle was heavier than June expected. It sat on the table between them, long and dark and clean. Worn but well cared for, like everything else in Cole's life, it bore signs of hard use and quiet respect.
You ever fired one?
He asked. They were standing just outside the barn, early morning light spilling gold across the pasture. June had finished feeding the chickens and scrubbing the cast iron pans before she'd found him oiling the gun near the corral.
"No," she admitted, "but I want to learn."
Cole nodded once. No question why, no lecture, just acceptance. He checked the chamber, handed it to her.
"It's a 30-30. Lever action. Sight's true, but it kicks harder than you'd think."
June took it carefully. Her hands looked too small around the stock, her fingers pale against the dark metal. The weight of it grounded her. It didn't make her feel safe, but it made her feel real, capable. Cole walked her down past the paddock toward the field where a row of empty bottles stood lined on a fence rail, waiting like silent witnesses.
"Feet shoulder width apart," he said. "Back straight. Hold it firm."
She did as he said, though her stance wobbled. Her skirts tangled at her ankles. Sweat already beaded at her temples from the heat. Cole stepped behind her, not touching, just close enough that she could feel the solidity of his presence.
"Now," he said. "Breathe in slow. Line up the front sight with the target. Let the back blur a little. Don't blink."
She exhaled, aimed, pulled the trigger. The sound cracked through the air like a bone snapping. The rifle kicked hard into her shoulder, staggering her back a half step. She missed. Cole caught her elbow and steadied her.
"You okay?"
June nodded, blinking fast. Her shoulder throbbed and her ears rang, but she didn't flinch from the next round.
"Again,"
she said. He raised an eyebrow.
"I need to feel it again. Until I don't flinch."
Cole reloaded and handed it back. This time she braced harder. She still missed, then missed again. But on the fourth shot, the bottle exploded into glass and dust. She didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just stared at the broken shards, breathing hard. Cole watched her carefully.
"You're not afraid of the gun?" "No," she said. "I'm afraid of being helpless."
He nodded slowly, said nothing. They spent the rest of the morning at the fence rail. June fired until her shoulder bruised purple and her arms ached. Cole only stopped her when her aim started to go lazy.
"Pain means you're losing form," he said. "That's when accidents happen."
She handed the rifle back, hands shaking.
"Can we do it again tomorrow?" she asked. "We can do it every day."
Back at the house, she stood at the wash basin and peeled off her blouse. The bruise had already bloomed dark under the skin. Her collarbone ached with every breath. She touched it gently, not wincing. Pain was good. Pain meant she was trying. Outside, she heard Ike's voice through the open window.
"She's got fire in her, that one." "She's got reason,"
Cole replied.
"You think she can hold a rifle on a man if the time comes?" "She won't shake," Cole said, "but she'll feel it." "You gonna tell her what happened in Wyoming?"
Then Cole said, quietly,
"Soon."
June stepped back from the window. She already knew pain. She could learn to carry the rest. That evening after supper, Cole handed her a small leather pouch.
"Bullets," he said. "Keep some on you. Never know."
She nodded, tucking them into the drawer beside her bed.
"Tomorrow," she said, "can we work on loading faster?"
He paused, then nodded once.
"We can." She hesitated. "Thank you for this." He shrugged. "Better to teach you than leave you blind." "No," she said. "That's not why you're doing it."
He looked at her then, the last slant of sunlight catching the edge of his jaw, his hair curling near his temple from sweat.
"You need to be able to stand on your own," he said, "with or without me."
She wanted to argue, but she didn't. Because he was right. And because she didn't yet know what with him meant. Later, she sat on the porch alone, watching the stars bleed into the sky. The wind had quieted. Somewhere a coyote howled and was answered. Crickets hummed low in the tall grass. Her arms ached, her back burned. But there was something else now, a flicker beneath the fatigue, a glimmer of readiness. For the first time since Amarillo, June wasn't hoping someone would come save her. She was planning what she'd do when danger came. And it would come. Dutch didn't like being ignored. He'd come back. Sooner or later. But next time she wouldn't tremble.
The recoil bruised my shoulder, but for the first time, I didn't feel small.
Sunday mornings came slow in Palo Duro. The wind eased up, the sky softened, and even the chickens seemed quieter. June stood on the porch in a clean cotton dress, watching the dust settle along the horizon. The bruise on her shoulder had faded to yellow, but her muscles still remembered every kick of the rifle. Cole had gone to check on the north fence line. Ike was fixing a cracked water trough. June had just started kneading biscuit dough when she saw a buggy kicking up dust down the main road, one she didn't recognize. It stopped at the gate. A woman stepped down, gloves neat, hat pinned tight, not a hair out of place. Mid-50s, polished, sharp-eyed. She didn't need to announce who she was. Church folk always carried themselves like someone was watching. June wiped her hands on a towel and stepped off the porch as the woman approached.
"Miss Harrow." "Yes, I'm Ruth Quinn."
Her voice was clipped, polite but distant.
"From the Ladies' Auxiliary of the Palo Duro Church." June straightened. "Can I help you with something?" "I was in town,"
Ruth said, glancing around.
"Thought I'd drop by. See how you're adjusting."
June said nothing. The pause between them stretched too long.
"You're quite a topic,"
Ruth added with a small, thin smile.
"People talk, you know, about where you came from, about who you came for."
June folded her arms.
"I imagine they do."
Ruth took a step closer, lowering her voice.
"I'm not here to judge, Miss Harrow. I'm here to offer options. There's a room open at the boarding house in town. It's clean, respectable, safer, perhaps, for a woman in your situation."
June swallowed the insult tucked between those words.
"I'm not looking for a room," she said evenly. "I have one. Living with a man like Cole Ramirez." Ruth said, "Even if nothing improper's happening, it gives people the wrong impression. That kind of talk spreads fast."
June held her gaze.
"Let it spread."
For a flicker of a second, Ruth's expression shifted, something like surprise. She hadn't expected resistance, certainly not from someone like June.
"I see,"
Ruth said, tightening her gloves.
"Well, should you change your mind, the church always welcomes women seeking a more upright path."
She turned back to her buggy, chin high. June stood still, watching her ride away. Cole came back an hour later, sweat streaking his shirt, hat pulled low. He took one look at her face and stopped mid-step.
"Something happened."
June handed him a glass of water.
"A visit from the church." His jaw clenched. "Ruth Quinn. You know her. She talks nice," he said, "but she carries a knife in every word." June nodded. "She offered me a room in town. Said I'd ruin your name if I stayed." "Then you think she's right?"
Cole set the glass down and didn't say anything for a long moment.
"No," June said. "I think she wants me gone. And I think she knows Dutch isn't finished yet."
Cole stared out toward the barn.
"Ruth's the kind who looks for cracks. In people, in stories. If she knows something, she'll use it." "You mean about you?" June stepped closer. "You're not the only one with a past, Cole."
He didn't answer. That made him look at her.
"I don't need you to be clean," she said. "I just need you to be honest."
His voice was rough when he finally spoke.
"I'm trying."
That night, the wind picked up. The kind of wind that tugged at doors and made trees groan in their roots. June couldn't sleep. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and stepped out onto the porch, barefoot. Cole was already there. Sitting in the dark, elbows on his knees, hat in his lap.
"You always sit out here when it storms?" she asked. "I don't like sleeping when it howls like this."
She sat beside him. The silence between them wasn't heavy, it felt like an understanding, like two people listening to the same deep, invisible thing.
She said something else. June murmured. "Ruth," she said, "people are asking questions. From Wyoming."
Cole didn't move. June turned to look at him.
"What happened there?"
He didn't answer, but this time he didn't walk away either. The wind tugged at the porch lantern, making it creak. "I had a wife," he said finally. "Her name was Clara." June didn't speak.
"She was killed 3 years ago. In Wyoming. I tracked the man who did it. Caught him outside a saloon in Cheyenne."
He turned the hat in his hands.
"I didn't wait for law. I just did what needed doing." June swallowed hard, and then? I ran.
The wind groaned against the siding.
You don't talk about her. No. Why now?
He looked at her.
Because you're still here.
Later, June lay in bed listening to the storm rage across the ranch. The walls groaned. Rain tapped the window in slow, uncertain rhythm. She pictured Clara. No face, just a name. A space between Cole's words. A wound he didn't cover, but didn't touch either. She understood that. She thought of the church and of Ruth Quinn's stiff kindness, of how it took only a whisper to fracture a woman's place in a town like this. But whispers didn't scare her anymore. People like Ruth pointed fingers from safe porches. People like Dutch took what they wanted in the dark. But here, on this stretch of rough land, June was learning something she never had before. She could hold her own. And she wasn't alone.
I wasn't afraid of his past. I was afraid he'd never trust me with it.
It started with smoke. A thin trail rising beyond the southern ridge just past the grazing field. June saw it first while hanging damp laundry behind the barn. The fabric snapped in the wind, but it didn't cover the sharp, acrid scent that followed. She dropped the clothespins and ran. By the time she reached the porch, Cole had already seen it. He was strapping on his holster, moving fast but steady, a line set deep between his brows.
Ike's checking the lower fence,
he said without looking at her.
I need you to stay here.
June didn't argue. Not yet. She followed him to the edge of the yard and saw the fire stretching in thin fingers through the brittle grass. It wasn't big yet, but in Texas heat,
not big, could become too late. Was it lightning? Cole's jaw tightened. No storm last night?
She asked. They both knew what that meant. Dutch. He didn't need to ride in with a gun to shake the ground. All he had to do was light a match in the right place and wait for the wind to do the rest. Cole grabbed a shovel and a worn burlap sack.
I'll try to get ahead of it. You, stay close to the pump. If the wind shifts, wet down the barn.
June grabbed the extra water bucket from the porch.
You'll need help. I've done this before.
So have, she said, holding his eyes.
And I'm not letting you burn alone.
A beat passed. Then he handed her a second sack. They reached the fire line fast. The flames crackled low, licking at dry weeds, turning grass to ash in seconds. Cole moved ahead, beating the fire with the wet sack, stomping embers, cutting a trench with the shovel to stop it from crawling forward. June followed his lead. The smoke burned her throat, her dress caught at her ankles. But she didn't stop, not when sparks danced up her sleeve, not when her boots scorched through at the toes. She kept swinging, kept digging. The sun climbed overhead, cruel and hot. Time blurred into nothing but breath and fire and the rhythm of survival. An hour passed, maybe more. The fire didn't win. When the last patch hissed and blackened into wet dirt, June collapsed backward into the grass. Her face was streaked with soot, her hands raw. Her lungs ached from the smoke, but they'd stopped it. The barn was safe. The pasture, too. Cole stood a few feet away, chest heaving, shirt soaked through.
You all right?
He called. She gave him a thumbs up, too breathless to speak. He walked toward her, offering a canteen. She drank deeply, then handed it back.
It wasn't an accident,
she said.
No. You think it was him? Yes. Then why not come himself? Why start fires and play games?
Cole sat beside her, arms resting on his knees.
Because men like Dutch only come close when they're sure you'll break.
She stared at the scorched earth in front of them.
He's waiting to find a crack.
Cole looked over at her, quiet for a moment.
Then we don't give him one.
Back at the ranch, Ike was waiting. He'd seen the smoke and run all the way from the back pasture. He helped Cole pull buckets to cool the smoldering edge, then started walking the fence line in case the fire had been a distraction for something else. That evening, June washed the soot off her arms and face in the basin. Her skin was red, her palms blistered, but there was a calm beneath the pain. She'd fought something real today and won. Cole sat on the porch, shirtless under the moonlight, arms scraped and raw. She brought him a clean cloth soaked in cool water and handed it to him without a word. He pressed it to his neck and said,
"You held your ground." June shrugged. "I didn't see another choice." "You had one." He said, "You always do."
She sat beside him.
"You think this is what he wants? To wear us out until we're too tired to fight back?" "Yes," Cole said, "but it won't work."
He didn't say it like a threat, just a promise. June looked at him, really looked. His face was cut from shadows and starlight, but there was something different in him tonight, not softer exactly, but closer.
"What happened after you killed that man in Wyoming?"
she asked softly. Cole didn't move. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer.
"I buried her," he said, "by the cottonwoods, left the farm to her sister, walked south, didn't speak to anyone for 6 months." "Why here?" He exhaled. "I don't know. The land was empty. It didn't ask questions." "And now,"
she whispered. He looked at her.
"Now it has you on it."
Her breath caught. She reached for his hand. His fingers closed over hers, rough and warm. They sat in silence, the wind soft again, no fire, no threats, just the wide open space between past and maybe. But that calm didn't last, because later when they turned in, Ike knocked on Cole's door. His voice was low, urgent.
"You need to see this."
They followed him out to the fence line. Tied to the post was a scrap of burlap, burnt at the edges, soaked in kerosene, and scrawled across it in sharp black ink. "Why you cannot I done?" June read it. Her stomach turned. Cole didn't speak. He stared at the message like it wasn't new, like it was just the next thing in a long list of wrongs catching up. Ike said nothing, just looked between them. June turned to Cole.
"You said we don't give him a crack," she said. "But Cole, he already knows where the break is." "The fire didn't scare me, but the message said he knew exactly where to aim next."
The sun was barely up when June found Cole in the barn saddling his horse. He hadn't said a word over breakfast. Not when she handed him the coffee, not when Ike made a dry remark about Dutch getting bolder. Just quiet, deliberate motion, cinching straps, checking buckles, like he had somewhere to be and didn't want to explain.
"Where are you going?"
June asked from the barn door. Cole didn't look at her.
"Town. Alone." "Cole." Her voice sharpened. "That message wasn't just a warning. It was personal. Dutch wants you to react." "I'm not reacting," he said. "I'm confirming something."
She stepped into the barn, straw crunching under her boots.
"Then let me come." "No. I'm not asking."
This time he did look at her. His face was unreadable, eyes hard as nails.
"He won't touch you here." "That's not the point," she said. "I'm not staying behind like some helpless thing you have to protect. If we're doing this, if we're fighting this, then you don't go into it alone."
Cole's jaw flexed, but he didn't argue. 10 minutes later they were riding into town side by side. Palo Duro always felt smaller after a long ride. The dusty main street was already stirring, merchants sweeping storefronts, wagons rattling past. Folks paused to watch them ride in. The girl from the fire and the man with a buried past. June caught Ruth Quinn standing stiff outside the church steps, lips tight, eyes judging. A few whispers followed them as they dismounted. Cole led her toward the sheriff's office, but before they reached it, a young boy came sprinting up the road, breathless.
"Mr. Rem?"
Cole turned, hand already brushing the grip of his revolver. The boy skidded to a stop.
"Sheriff ain't in. Dutch came by this morning, left this for you." Her stomach dropped. "He's baiting you."
He held out a folded scrap of paper, dirt smudged, torn at the edge. Cole opened it and read, then handed it silently to June. "You want answers? Meet me at Widow's Bluff. Sundown, come alone, or I start cutting pieces."
"Yes." "Then don't go. I have to."
June handed the note back.
"Then I'm coming too." "No." Cole said, "This is my debt."
She grabbed his arm.
"No, Cole, it's ours now."
Back at the ranch, Ike was waiting, arms folded, face darker than usual.
"Bluff's a trap," he said flatly. "I know." Ike spat. "Then don't be stupid," Cole replied. "I'm not going to shoot unless I have to." Ike glanced at June. "You believe that?"
She didn't answer right away.
He's not going for revenge. He's going for truth.
Cole turned to her.
Dutch knew things he shouldn't. About Clara. About me. I need to know who's feeding him.
Ike rubbed his jaw.
There's only 3 people who knew what really happened in Wyoming. You, the preacher, and Ruth.
June finished, the word bitter on her tongue. They all stared at each other.
She wouldn't,
said.
She would. Cole replied. Not with malice, with pride. If she thinks I'm a threat to the town's image, she'd feed Dutch information just to watch me leave. Ike nodded once. You want me to ride with you? No, Cole said. If he sees all 3 of us, he'll bolt. I'll go. But I want you close. Circle the bluff. Keep eyes on the high ridge. June stepped forward. What about me? You're staying here.
She opened her mouth, but this time he touched her face. Just a brief, callous touch to her cheek. His voice dropped low. If something happens to me, I need one of us to make it out. She swallowed hard. Don't talk like that. But he didn't answer. Sundown came like blood spilling across the sky. Cole rode out alone. June paced the kitchen, then the porch, her heart a hammer in her chest. She kept the rifle nearby just in case. The wind picked up, too warm, too fast. Dust swirled in the distance like ghosts stirring. Ike was gone too, shadowing Cole like they planned. And she was left with nothing but waiting. Until hoofbeats sounded down the ridge road. Not Cole. She grabbed the rifle and stepped outside. He came slow, lazy, reins loose in his hand like he was just passing by. But his eyes locked on her the moment he saw the barrel aimed his way. Well, he said. Aren't you a pretty sentry? She didn't blink. Turn around. He swung one leg over the saddle and stepped down. I said turn around, Dutch. He smiled. I'm not here for trouble. Just wanted to say good luck to your boy. June's finger twitched near the trigger. He'll see you first. That's the problem. Dutch said. He always does. He took one step forward. She cocked the rifle. Dutch raised both hands, still smiling. All right. Message received. But let me leave you with this. Darling, Cole Ramirez can bury the past all he wants. But the grave don't stay closed forever. He turned, mounted, and rode off into the dusk. At Widow's Bluff, Cole stood alone. The view stretched wide, flat plains, thorny brush, the distant hum of a riverbed. The wind carried nothing but silence, then footsteps. Dutch appeared from behind a boulder, unarmed, hands visible. Thought you might not show. I should have killed you last time. Dutch shrugged. You did. Or you thought you did, Cole said. Cole didn't move. I've got something you want, Dutch said. And I want something back. What? A name cleared. Cole narrowed his eyes. Yours? No, Dutch said, smiling. Clara's. The wind fell still. Cole's voice was low. Say that name again. Easy, Dutch said. You think she died clean? She didn't. That preacher back in Cheyenne, he kept records. Letters. Clara wasn't who you thought she was. Cole didn't speak. His hands clenched. The knuckles went white. Dutch tossed a folded envelope to the ground between them. Read it, then we talk. Then he turned and walked away, whistling. Cole stared at the envelope for a long time before picking it up. He didn't open it yet. Behind him, Ike stepped from the shadows. Well, I don't know, Cole said. Back at the ranch, night had fully settled. June was still sitting on the porch when she saw the 2 riders return. She stood, ran to meet them. Cole looked worn, pale but whole. She didn't speak, just reached for him. He handed her the envelope. What is it? A lie, he said. Or maybe the last piece of the truth. If what's in that letter is real, then everything I thought I knew about Clara, and about myself, is about to break wide open. June sat by the oil lamp, the envelope in her hands. The paper was creased, the edges weathered like it had passed through too many hands and carried too much weight. Cole stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the dark yard beyond the glass. He hadn't said a word since handing it to her. She turned the envelope over once more, then slid a finger under the flap. Inside was a letter, written in careful feminine script. She began to read, "My name is Clara Ramirez. If you're reading this, I am likely already gone." June read in silence, the words settling over her like dust. Beside her, the flame from the lamp flickered low, casting shadows on the wall. The letter wasn't what she expected. There were no confessions of betrayal, no dark secrets, no love letters to someone else, but there was pain. Clara had written about fear, about a man named Jeb, someone from her past before Cole. Someone who'd threatened to expose her for things she hadn't done, unless she paid. He'd followed her from Kansas to Wyoming, left threats nailed to their door. Clara hadn't told Cole because she didn't want to drag his name through her shame. She thought she could pay Jeb off one last time, meet him in secret. That night, she didn't come home. She never would. By the end of the letter, June's hands were trembling.
"She was protecting you,"
she whispered. Cole didn't respond.
"She kept it from you because she was trying to shield you." "She lied," he said quietly. "She kept a whole war inside herself and never told me." "She loved you," June said, "and she was scared. That doesn't make her a liar. It makes her human."
He turned from the window, his face hollow.
"I killed the wrong man." June's breath caught. "What?" "After Clara died," Cole said, "I found a man drunk behind the saloon who'd been seen around our property. He bragged about being with her. He had her scarf in his pocket."
He looked at her, eyes burning.
"I put a bullet through his chest." June stood. "You thought he—" "I needed him to be the one,"
Cole said, his voice rising.
"I needed someone to pay for what happened to her. And I didn't wait to find out the truth."
June walked to him, placed a hand on his chest.
"You made a mistake. A terrible one. But you thought you were protecting her." He laughed hollow. "I buried the wrong man. And now Dutch has the real story."
June looked down at the letter.
"If Dutch knows who really killed Clara, why hasn't he gone to the sheriff?" "Because he wants leverage." Cole said, "He wants to own me, ruin me slow, piece by piece."
Later that night, after the house had gone quiet, June stood alone on the porch. The air was still, cold enough to bite through her shawl. She heard Ike's boots behind her.
"He told you?" She nodded. "All of it." "Then you know what's coming." "I do." "You think less of him now?"
She shook her head.
"I think he's been punishing himself longer than any prison would."
Ike leaned against the railing.
"I saw the man he shot. Never sat right with me. Cole doesn't kill out of anger. He kills when there's no other road." "He's not the man Dutch says he is,"
June said. Ike's eyes glinted in the dark.
"No. But the town won't care. Once Ruth or someone else gets wind of what's in that letter, they'll turn on him. Doesn't matter what Dutch has done. They'll just see a killer who buried a lie."
June tightened her grip on the railing.
"Then we don't let them see the lie. We show them the truth."
By morning, June had a plan. They would go to the preacher in town, the same one who'd married Clara and Cole. He'd kept Clara's letters after her death. Dutch must have gotten them from him or someone connected. June needed to see what else the preacher knew. Cole resisted at first.
"The church won't help us." "They might," June said, "if we show them who Dutch really is."
And for that, they needed proof. She and Ike rode into town, leaving Cole behind to prepare the ranch in case things turned. They stopped first at the sheriff's office. The deputy, a young man with tired eyes, barely looked up from his desk.
"Sheriff's still up in Canyon," he said. "Won't be back till Tuesday." "We don't have until Tuesday," June said. "Dutch Colburn threatened my life and tried to burn our land." The deputy blinked. "You got proof of that?"
June stepped closer, laying the scorched burlap from the fence post on his desk.
"This. And a letter from Cole's late wife, one that Dutch has been using to blackmail him." The deputy sighed. "If Dutch steps foot in town again, I'll hold him. But until then, I need more than rumors and scorched rags." Ike leaned in. "Then get ready, son. Because the next time he steps foot here, it won't be with a letter."
They left the office and rode straight to the church. The building stood quiet in the morning light, whitewashed walls glowing against the sky. June knocked on the side door until an older man answered, Reverend Harlan. Gray-haired, slow-moving, with a look like he'd already seen too much of this world.
We need to talk about Clara Ramirez. The Reverend blinked. What about her?
June said without preamble.
She wrote you letters before she died. We need to see them.
His face shifted and he stepped back.
Those were personal. She's dead. June interrupted. And Cole might lose everything because Dutch Colburn got his hands on one of them. We need to know what's in the rest.
He hesitated. Then, with a sigh, he led him into his study. He opened a drawer, pulled out a small bundle tied with blue ribbon. 4 letters, yellowed with age. June read them all. They painted the same picture: a woman afraid, a woman ashamed of her past, a woman who loved her husband so deeply she would rather bear the burden of silence than bring disgrace to his name. One letter mentioned Jeb Tully, full name, the same man Cole had not killed.
Is he still alive? Reverend Harlan nodded, moved down toward Lubbock. Last I heard, he worked at a rail yard. June stood. Then we find him?
June asked. Back at the ranch, she handed the letters to Cole. He didn't read them, just looked at her.
You believe me now?
He asked.
I always did,
June said. Cole's hands trembled slightly as he tucked the letters away.
If we bring Jeb forward, if he tells the truth, Dutch loses every card he's holding. June nodded. Then we ride at first light.
Cole studied her for a long moment.
You're not afraid I'll break? I'm afraid you won't forgive yourself.
He looked away, but not before she saw the crack in his armor. The grief was still there, but now it had a name, a shape, and maybe, just maybe, a way out.
The truth didn't clear the past, but it finally gave us a place to stand.
The morning broke slow and cold, with clouds hanging low over the Texas plains like a warning. June stood by the corral, saddling her mare. She moved fast, practiced now, tightening straps, checking her rifle, slipping the folded letters into her coat. Cole finished prepping his horse in silence, the brim of his hat low over his eyes. He hadn't said much since last night. Not about Clara, not about Dutch, not even about Jeb. But this wasn't a day for talking, it was a day for answers. They mounted up and rode out just after dawn. The trail to Lubbock was long, dry scrub, sharp wind, and hours of silence stretching between words. But it wasn't empty. There was something else riding with them now. Purpose. For the first time since the fire, since Dutch's visit, even since June arrived, this wasn't about running. It was about turning to face the storm.
You sure he's still alive? June nodded. Preacher said he works freight. Rail yard outside Lubbock. Doesn't use his full name. Goes by JT.
Cole asked after a long silence. Cole didn't say anything. She looked over at him.
What will you do if we find him?
His eyes stayed on the road.
Listen, then decide.
By noon, they reached the edge of Lubbock, dusty buildings, iron tracks stretching across flatland. The freight yard smelled like Cole's sweat and desperation. Men moved boxes, loaded crates. Steam hissed from a nearby engine. June approached a worker leaning on a shovel.
We're looking for someone, JT Tully.
The man squinted at her, wiped his brow.
You law? No. Then you might try the back shed. Big guy, missing 2 fingers. Smokes cheap cigars.
They found him sitting on a crate, chewing a matchstick. Gray hair under a filthy cap, thick shoulders, scar on his jaw. June stopped a few feet away.
You JT.
He looked up, eyes narrowing.
Who's asking? Name's June Harrow. This is Cole Ramirez.
The matchstick stopped moving.
You know that name,
she said. Jeb's eyes flicked to Cole, jaw tightening.
You lookin' for a fight, mister? Cole didn't move, looking for the truth. Jeb stood. I got nothing to say to you. You do, June said. You just don't want to say it in front of him.
Jeb took a step forward, towering.
I don't owe you people nothing. Whatever you think you know. You blackmailed Clara. She cut in. Before she died, you threatened her.
He blinked. And then for a moment the bravado cracked.
I didn't kill her,
Jeb muttered.
no, Cole said. But your threat sent her to meet someone who did.
Silence fell between the three of them. June took out the letters and held them up.
She wrote everything down, her fear, your name, what you wanted from her, the money, the secrets.
Jeb's eyes darted to the pages, his shoulders sagging.
I was just trying to scare her, he mumbled. Didn't know she'd go like that. Who was she meeting that night?
Jeb hesitated.
I don't know. You do,
Cole said. Jeb looked at June, then at Cole. Something shifted in his face, resignation, guilt. A decision.
She told me his name was Melton. Harlan Melton. A ranch hand up near the basin. She said he knew about her past and was threatening to tell. Said if she didn't meet him, he'd go straight to the sheriff.
Cole stepped back like someone had struck him.
Melton's dead, he said. Killed in a cattle stampede 2 weeks after Clara died. I didn't think. Jeb shrugged. Then I guess justice already came for him. June stepped closer. So you did threaten her? I did,
Jeb said, staring down at his boots.
Didn't touch her. Didn't want her dead. I just wanted a little money. She was married to a landowner. I figured she could spare some. He spat. Never thought she'd end up in a grave.
Cole looked ready to lunge, but June placed a hand on his arm.
It's not worth it.
Cole stared at Jeb a moment longer, then turned and walked out. June followed, heart pounding. They rode until the sun began to sink low behind the hills. Cole said nothing for a long time. Finally, as the trail leveled out, he spoke. I thought I'd killed the man who ruined Clara. I spent 3 years hating myself for it. I know. I almost became the monster Dutch keeps trying to paint me as. June pulled her horse to a stop. No, Cole. You were a man in pain, searching for justice in a world that doesn't give it freely. That doesn't make you a monster. He looked at her, the wind catching his shirt, his face carved from dusk and guilt. I couldn't save her. No, June said. But you can stop Dutch from using her death as a weapon. They returned to the ranch after dark. Ike met them at the gate, rifle slung over his shoulder. Heard from town, he said. Dutch has been sniffing around the saloon, talking real loud about ghosts and reckoning. Folks are starting to listen. Then it's time we told the town the truth, Cole said. June stepped up beside him. No more fear, Ike raised a brow. You really gonna walk into church and admit to shooting a man who didn't do the thing you thought he did? I am, Cole said. And I'll show them the real criminal in the process. He looked at June. We expose Dutch now, all of it. That night June couldn't sleep. She walked to the barn, sat in the hay, and listened to the horses breathe. The wind whispered through the rafters. She thought about Clara, about how fear had silenced her, how shame had caged her, and how Dutch was still using that silence to hurt the living. Not anymore. Tomorrow they'd go to the town, to the preacher, to Ruth, to anyone who'd listen not with anger, but with truth. And if Dutch tried to twist it again, if he tried to burn them with Clara's memory, they'd answer with something stronger. Light. This story doesn't belong to Dutch anymore, it belongs to us. The town of Palo Duro felt different when you walked in with the truth. Not heavier, sharper. As June and Cole rode through the main street the next morning, people stopped what they were doing. The blacksmith leaned on his hammer. A woman pulling bread from her wagon tray paused, brow furrowed. Ruth Quinn stood outside the post office in a starched blouse, watching with folded arms. June felt it in the air, suspicion, maybe fear. But underneath, something else. Curiosity. Cole dismounted first. He looked like a man walking into his own sentencing. His shoulders were square, his eyes forward. But June could feel the pressure in the set of his jaw. She touched his arm briefly as they tied off the horses. You don't owe them shame, she said quietly. I don't need their forgiveness, he answered. Just the truth to land where it should. The doors of the church opened with a hollow creak. Reverend Harlan was already there, standing near the pulpit. The pews were half full, word had spread fast. Townsfolk, ranch hands, even shopkeepers had gathered. Whispers rippled through the room when Cole stepped inside. June followed close behind, holding the bundle of Clara's letters in her hands. Ruth Quinn rose from her seat in the second pew.
"Is this a service or a spectacle?" "No,"
Cole said, his voice firm.
"It's a reckoning."
The preacher nodded slowly and stepped aside, offering him the space at the front. Cole stood at the altar, the morning sun slanting through the tall windows, cutting his silhouette into sharp lines.
"I'm not here to beg," he said, "and I'm not here to clear my name."
Murmurs rolled like soft thunder through the pews. He waited, then went on.
3 years ago, my wife Clara was killed. I thought I knew who was responsible. I acted on that belief. I took a life."
A woman gasped near the back. The preacher bowed his head. Ruth stiffened.
"I was wrong," Cole said. "The man I shot was a drunk with a big mouth and bad timing. I didn't know the whole story because Clara never told me. Because she was scared."
He turned toward June, who stepped up beside him and handed him the letters.
"She wrote these,"
Cole said, holding them up.
"Not to me, but to the preacher. In them she names the man who blackmailed her. The fear that drove her to meet someone in secret. That meeting cost her her life."
He handed the letters to the reverend, who nodded gravely. June stepped forward now.
"That blackmailer is still alive. And he gave those letters to Dutch Colburn, who's been using them to manipulate this town, and to threaten Cole."
Gasps stirring in the pews. Ruth's eyes narrowed.
"Dutch used Clara's death to spin a story," June continued. "He came to the ranch, burned our pasture, left threats, made it look like Cole had something to hide. But Dutch is the one hiding behind half-truths and fear."
The preacher stepped forward now.
"I can confirm these letters are real. Clara wrote them in confidence. She never intended them to be used this way." "Too late,"
someone muttered. Ruth rose, her voice clipped.
"So what now? We forget a man died. Pretend none of this matters."
Cole looked at her.
"I'm not asking you to forget. I'm standing here so you don't."
He stepped down from the pulpit and stood in the center aisle, where they could all see his face. His voice was low, steady.
"I've carried this weight every day since Clara died. Not because someone told me to. Because I deserved to. But Dutch, he's using that grief to divide us. He wants control, not justice."
An older rancher stood near the back.
"So what do we do about it?" "Don't let him twist the truth any further," June said. "Don't let him decide what story gets told."
The room fell quiet. People shifted in their seats. It wasn't agreement, not yet. But something had cracked open. After the service, folks lingered in the street. Some approached Cole with quiet nods, others kept their distance. Ruth disappeared before anyone could speak to her. Back near the saloon, a man in a dusty coat and crooked hat leaned against a post. Dutch. He watched them approach, a smile twisting at the corner of his mouth.
"Heard there was a sermon this morning," he drawled. "How was the gospel?"
June stepped up before Cole could.
"You're finished." Dutch scoffed. "Town doesn't work like that, sweetheart. Truth's just a story with better timing."
Cole's hands flexed at his sides.
"We showed them Clara's letters."
Dutch's smile faltered for the briefest second.
Jeb confessed. June added, "Named Melton, it's over."
Dutch's eyes flicked to the people now watching from across the street. He shrugged, trying to recover the smugness.
"So what? You think they'll pat you on the back? Buy you a drink?" "No," Cole said. "But they won't follow you anymore."
For a long moment Dutch said nothing. His smile vanished. Then, with a cold laugh, he pushed off the post.
"Careful," he said, stepping in close. "You tell too many stories. Someone might start digging into yours." "I already did," Cole said. "There's nothing left to dig."
Dutch stared at him, hard calculating. Then he turned and walked away, not fast, not angry, but for the first time small. That night, June and Cole sat on the porch in silence. The air was warm, crickets hummed. For once, the quiet didn't feel like waiting, it felt earned. Cole leaned back in his chair, boots crossed, hat low.
You think it's over?
He asked.
No, June said, but it's changing.
He nodded. They didn't need to say more. The ranch was still standing. The town hadn't turned. Dutch hadn't drawn blood. And Clara, finally, wasn't a shadow used to wound. She was a woman remembered rightly. As the stars came out, Cole turned to her, voice low.
Whatever comes next, I want it with you.
June looked at him.
Then let's make sure it's something worth surviving for. The town didn't save us, but they saw us. And sometimes that's the first step toward belonging.
The fire came just before dawn. A thin column of smoke, rising black against the pale sky, caught Ike's eye as he stepped out to feed the horses. His curse was short, sharp. The barn again. By the time he shouted for Cole, flames were already crawling across the west wall. Cole ran barefoot into the yard, June right behind him. They didn't ask questions. They grabbed buckets, hauled water from the pump, and yelled for the ranch hands who came sprinting from the bunkhouse. It wasn't an accident. The kerosene stung their throats as soon as they got close enough. Dutch, no doubt, left now. They managed to get it under control, barely. The roof held, but 2 stalls were scorched, the hay ruined, and one wall blackened down to the beams. One of the younger horses came out of it limping. June knelt beside the colt, whispering steady as she checked his leg. Cole stood by the charred remains of the door, fists clenched, breathing like he'd been punched. Ike wiped his face with a wet sleeve.
He's not letting this go quiet. No, Cole said. He's pushing us. Into what?
Cole didn't answer, but June did.
Into killing him, or being killed.
The 3 of them stared at the smoke curling into the rising light. By mid-morning, word had spread, again. Ruth Quinn showed up on the edge of the ranch just after breakfast. This time she didn't come with sweet words or veiled warnings. She came with the deputy. June met them at the fence, rifle resting in the crook of her arm. The deputy lifted both hands.
Easy, ma'am. Just need to ask a few questions.
June opened the gate.
Come on then. But we're not playing games.
Cole joined her a moment later, face streaked with ash. Ruth gave him a quick once, over like she was cataloging every mark against him. The deputy cleared his throat.
Town council's concerned, Mr. Ramirez. That's 2 fires in a week. Folks are saying this land's cursed. That trouble keeps finding its way here.
Cole folded his arm.
Then maybe go find the man lighting the matches. We've had no witnesses. You have a pattern. June said you have motive, you have threats. That enough? Ruth spoke instead. People are scared, Cole. And when they get scared, they start thinking about who they want nearby. Who they want gone.
The deputy shifted, uncomfortable.
Then maybe they should think harder about the ones hiding in plain sight.
June snapped. The deputy raised a hand.
Look, we're not accusing anyone. But until this blows over, the mayor's asked that you stay out of town. No church, no saloon, no markets.
June's mouth opened in disbelief.
You're banning him. Just a cooling off period.
Cole stepped forward, voice low.
That won't stop Dutch. No, Ruth said, but it might stop you.
They turned and left. June stood there, heart hammering. Cole didn't speak until the dust from their wagon had settled.
She wants me boxed in, hobbled. Dutch wants that, June said. Ruth's just giving it a church dress.
That afternoon, a single letter arrived, no return mark, tied to the neck of a dead chicken tossed over the ranch fence. June read it aloud at the kitchen table while Ike cleaned his rifle.
Next time it won't be the barn.
Certain. Cole stared at the page for a long time.
Then it ends. He said, tonight?
June looked at him, brow creased.
What do you mean? I mean we stop waiting for him to burn us out. We take the fight to him. Ike snorted. You gonna shoot him in the street? No. Cole said, we get proof. The kind that sticks. The kind the law can't ignore. June sat back. How? Ike's got friends at the freight yard. Same place Dutch has been hauling his smuggled goods through. Whiskey, maybe weapons. We catch him in the act. We catch him dirty, and he's finished.
Ike looked up, eyes narrowed.
That's a suicide run, Cole. You said yourself, you're tired of hiding. I am. But I'm also not ready to get my head blown off for a bad hunch.
Cole pulled out the scorched burlap from the fence line. The threatening letter, Clara's old pages. He laid them on the table.
This isn't a hunch, he said. This is a pattern.
Ike stared at the table, then exhaled.
All right. You're thinking tonight?
Ike gave him a tired grin.
Then I better clean this rifle properly.
June followed Cole outside. The sun was going down, casting long shadows over the fence posts. The horses were restless. So was she.
You really mean to bait him?
She asked.
No bait, Cole said. Just the truth laid in the right place. You said the law wouldn't listen. They won't, he said. Unless they hear the truth louder than Dutch's lies.
She stepped in front of him.
And if something happens, if he brings a gun instead of goods,
Cole looked at her, eyes soft.
Then you'll have the land. And the truth. No, June said firmly. You don't hand me this place in a eulogy. We fight together, or not at all.
He touched her face, Callow's thumb resting under her eye.
I'm not planning to die, he whispered. Not after everything we've survived.
She held his hand.
Then you come back, or I burn this town down finding you.
That night the plan unfolded fast. Ike took the back road toward the freight yard. Cole rode in from the south. June stayed behind, rifle ready, heart sick with waiting. 2 hours passed. Then 3, just before midnight, she heard the distant crack of gunfire. 1 shot. Then another. She didn't hesitate. She saddled her horse, lit a lantern, and rode like the wind was chasing her. Past the ridge, through the gully, down the hill toward the train yard where shadows moved like ghosts. She found Cole crouched behind a stack of crates, blood on his sleeve, but alive. Dutch lay on the ground 10 feet away, moaning, shot through the leg. Ike stood over him, rifle still smoking.
We got him,
he said, teeth bared.
Caught him red-handed, trading stolen arms to some drifter with a badge from nowhere.
June slid down beside Cole, her hands already checking his wound.
Clean through, he said, wincing. Hurts like hell, though. You idiot,
she whispered, eyes brimming. Dutch cursed from the ground.
You'll hang for this, Ramirez. Sheriff won't. Sheriff's here,
said a calm voice. Everyone turned. The sheriff, newly returned from Canyon, stepped out of the shadows. He looked at Dutch, then at the weapons scattered on the ground, then at the burned burlap in Ike's hand.
Colburn,
the sheriff said, voice flat.
You're under arrest.
As the sheriff's men cuffed Dutch and dragged him to the wagon, Cole slumped back against the crate.
You all right? He nodded. It's over,
June asked. She pressed her forehead to his.
Not over, she said, but finally we can breathe. He tried to bury us in smoke and silence, but the fire only made us brighter.
The courtroom was nothing more than a converted meeting hall behind the general store, 4 walls, creaky benches, and the dust of 100 shoes stirred up beneath the midday sun. But that morning, it might as well have been the center of the world. Every seat was taken. People stood along the walls, some with arms crossed, others with heads low, eyes darting between Dutch Colburn and Cole Ramirez like they weren't sure who to believe yet. Like even now, with Dutch shackled at the front of the room, truth still had to pass through a fire to be seen. June sat in the second row, just behind Cole, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Ike stood near the back, arms crossed, hat low, watching every movement. The sheriff leaned against the wall, expression unreadable. Dutch sat beside his lawyer, an oily man with too much cologne and too little spine, and stared at Cole like the war wasn't over, just paused. The judge arrived late. He was a wide man with sharp eyes and a slow voice, the kind that didn't care for stories, just facts. When the hearing began, it moved faster than anyone expected. The sheriff laid out the evidence first, the illegal goods found on site, the buyer's testimony, the matching handwriting from the threatening notes. Then the letters. The courtroom shifted when June stood to hand them over. She read one aloud, Clara's handwriting trembling off her tongue, sharp and aching even in memory. The room went still when she reached the final lines, where Clara begged for mercy, not from Cole, but from the past chasing her.
She wasn't weak,
June said softly, her voice steady.
She was surviving.
And with that, the last piece of Dutch's game fell apart. His lawyer objected, of course, rambling about forged notes, hearsay, character assassinations, but the judge wasn't moved. Then came Dutch's turn to speak. He stood slowly, leaning on one good leg, his face paler than usual.
You people think you know what justice is. He sneered. You think letters and burned barns make a case. This town was already rotting. I just exposed it.
The judge didn't flinch.
Are you denying possession of the contraband? No. Dutch snapped. I'm saying he's no better.
He pointed at Cole.
He shot a man dead. In cold blood. And now you want to pat his back because he cried about it.
Cole stood then, not to defend himself but to end it.
I killed a man,
he said clearly, facing the room.
I believed he hurt my wife. I was wrong. I've carried that weight every day since. But Dutch, he never carried anything. He took her death and made it into leverage.
He looked out at the townspeople, at Ruth, at the preacher, at the ranchers and shopkeepers and tired faces he'd passed on dusty streets for 3 years.
I'm not asking you to forget, he said, but I won't let the past be twisted into a weapon one more damn time.
Silence followed, then the judge leaned forward.
I've heard enough.
The sentence came quick. Dutch would face trial in Canyon for smuggling, extortion, and attempted arson. He'd be held in custody until then. The judge made it clear, if the town wanted peace, it would start by removing the man who profited most from its fear. As the room emptied, Dutch was dragged out through the back door, shouting curses and promises that no one really listened to. Not anymore. June exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Cole turned to her.
You were brave today. She smiled, tired. So were you.
He said that evening they rode back to the ranch under a golden sky. The wind was soft, the land scarred, but still standing. Ike rode ahead, giving them space. June let her horse fall in step with Cole's.
You think it's really over?
She asked. Cole didn't answer right away.
Not over, he finally said. But it's ours now, not his.
They reached the barn just as the last of the sun slipped behind the hills. The burned beams were already being replaced, one by one. The scent of ash still lingered, but it no longer smelled like defeat. Inside the house, June lit the lamp while Cole poured 2 glasses of rye. They sat at the table, the quiet between them easy now.
I keep thinking about Clara,
he said suddenly. June waited.
She never asked me to save her. But I tried anyway. I thought that was love, trying to carry her pain for her. June nodded slowly. It was love. It just wasn't enough to stop what was already chasing her.
He looked at her, eyes heavy.
You think we ever stop running from ghosts like that? No, she said. But we learn to live beside them. We learn not to let them speak louder than the people standing right in front of us. Cole smiled faint. You always find the right words.
June touched his hand across the table.
I'm not trying to save you, Cole, she said. I'm just trying to stay.
He covered her hand with his.
I'm finally ready to let someone. Justice didn't fix the past, but it gave us permission to build something honest from what was left.
The grass grew back slower than expected. It always did after a burn, but it came. Green shoots pushing through scorched soil, stubborn, quiet, alive. June stood on the edge of the south pasture one morning, arms crossed, wind lifting the hem of her dress. The air smelled of dirt and dew and old wood. Behind her, the ranch was humming again, horses fed, roof patched, new hay stacked high in the barn that once threatened to go up in smoke. Cole was fixing the gate, hammering in steady rhythm. Ike called out something crude from the corral, earning a bark of laughter from one of the ranch hands. It was the sound of things beginning again. June smiled. Sometimes starting over didn't feel like a trumpet call or a grand speech. Sometimes it was just another ordinary morning where nobody was running. No threats nailed to fence posts. No fire waiting in the dark. Just work, routine. Peace earned inch by inch. She looked down at her hands. They were rougher now, tanned from the sun, calloused from rope and tools and holding tight through the worst of it. But they were her hands, steady, capable, no longer afraid of disappearing. A door creaked behind her. Cole stepped out of the house, shirt sleeves rolled, hair damp from a rinse at the pump. He walked up behind her, slid his arm around her waist, and looked out over the same land.
"Looks different,"
he said.
"It does," she agreed, "but maybe it's us."
He didn't answer, just leaned his head against hers. After a long beat, he said,
"I'm thinking about building that second barn."
June turned, eyebrow raised.
"Already?" He shrugged. "Got a plan for something now." She grinned, "Like hope."
He smiled without looking at her.
"Yeah, like that."
They stood there a while longer, not saying much, just listening to the wind push gently through the tall grass, bending it but never breaking it. The town had changed too, in quiet ways. Ruth Quinn no longer walked with quite so much steel in her spine. She still eyed June with the sort of guarded calculation people saved for thunderclouds, but she didn't speak ill of her anymore, at least not where anyone would hear. The sheriff stopped by now and then, not for trouble, just to talk, share a drink, ask if Cole had seen any strangers on the trail.
"Place is safer with you here,"
he'd said once. Cole hadn't known what to say to that, not at the time, but it stuck. Dutch was gone. Transferred downstate, no word since. There were whispers of a sentence, appeals, but none of it mattered anymore. His power was gone, his reach broken. What he'd tried to destroy had outlived him. Not just the land, but the people on it. June had started writing. Nothing fancy. Notes mostly. Letters she never sent. A list of things she wanted to plant next spring. Sentences that came to her while brushing a horse or watching the wind shift across the plains. She kept them in a drawer by the kitchen window, a drawer Clara had once kept her linens in. There was something gentle about that, using the space again. Not to erase the past, but to soften it. Some scars needed to be seen. Some wounds needed time and light and breath to become something else. June knew that now, and when she caught Cole watching her across the room, sometimes the look in his eyes wasn't haunted anymore. It was rooted, like a man who'd finally stopped running, not because he found peace, but because he chose to build it. One evening, as the sky went gold and the earth turned soft and blue, they sat out on the porch together, June, Cole, Ike, and two ranch hands playing cards at a side table. June poured coffee. Cole reached for his. Ike tossed down his cards and cursed, drawing a round of laughter. The wind shifted, cool and clean, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something to fear. It felt wide open. Not easy. Not certain, and that was enough. Later, as the sun dropped and the stars blinked to life one by one, June sat with Cole in the quiet. He leaned back, eyes closed, listening to the creak of the porch boards and the hum of night. She looked at him for a long moment, then asked, softly, "Do you still think you don't belong here?" He opened his eyes. "No," he said. "I think I belong more than ever." She nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. They didn't speak after that. Words weren't needed. The land spoke for them, and it said, "You endured. You held. You stayed." That was the story now. Not fire, not fear, but staying. Together. Because some places don't save you. They ask you to fight for them. And when you do, they give you something better than safety. They give you home.